Welcome to Avenue M. My name is Joey Taylor.
And I'm Haroon Mogul.
We're two men on a journey of faith and meaning. In each episode, we unpack the moments that shape us, the struggles that build us, and the questions that intrigue us. The Lakers just sold for $12.5 billion, which got us wondering, what happens when being a fan starts to feel more like being a consumer? In this conversation, we look at what sports can give us at their best: inherited loyalties, shared memories, connection to place, and an easy way into relationship. And what happens when all of that belonging gets turned into a commodity. Along the way, we ask whether sports can be both sacred and profitable, whether our teams owe us anything in return for our devotion, and whether the way back might be surprisingly simple: watching, playing, and belonging together. The Lakers were just sold for an evaluation of $12.5 billion.
It's like a tank of gas. It's a lot of money.
It's like a tank of gas. And the guy who sold it, this Mark Walter guy, bought it just a year ago for $10 billion. And so he's done basically nothing and has collected $2.5 billion on his initial investment.
How surprising that a billionaire could get wealthier doing nothing, adding nothing of value. In fact, he's under investigation. So probably he's caused more harm than produced any value, and somehow out of that earned more money.
Yeah. And there are some currents here that I think we're not going to explore, but is worth just noting for a second, which is that the investigation seems to maybe be connected to the person that he chose to sell this team to, but I don't know if that's where we're going to go with the conversation necessarily.
You ever have someone that you used to like, you're friends with, and then your friendship with them dies, and you don't really know why? Maybe it makes you feel kind of weird or makes you feel some kind of way. And then you find out they did something, and that's immediately your excuse for justifying the fact that you'd already cut them out of your life.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about when I saw the Kushner name and the sale of the Lakers. And initially I thought it was Jared Kushner, not Jared brothers. Josh Kushner, is that correct?
Josh,
right?
Yeah.
Who's, apparently a Democrat, except for the actual things that he does. But that to me was like a capstone. Is that the word? It was a marker. Like, yeah, I didn't like the Lakers anymore. Now this is a great reason for me to justify why I stopped liking them. But then I went back to something you said. Goodness, was it like a month or two ago? We were talking about the World Cup, and you said, are sports idolatrous? Is that how you framed it? Like, you said something like that. Like, sports are like an idol. They can be an idol. They can compete with religion. Mm-hmm. And then I wondered, then I just started on this tangent of why I fell out of love with basketball specifically and sports more broadly. But I want to go to you, and I want to ask you what you meant by that, because you had surfaced this idea that sometimes sports can be for people an alternative religion or a replacement for religion, or can become idolatrous. If that's not too heavy a word, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
The thing that I'm trying to think through right now is it feels like some of what is rising to the surface for me with the sale of the Lakers is the ways in which sports are operating positively in our lives, and how that fantasy is being punctured when you see just the raw market-driven forces that are kind of underneath so much of these entities, so much of these establishments and corporations. And so the reason why I'm pausing here is because I think in light of this purchase, I almost feel like sports should be more like our religion. And what has happened is that it's become a function of our market, and has lost some of the features of religion that I really love in sports. Things like, you don't really choose your sports team. Your sports team is something you inherit. Your sports team asks something of you. The highest form of fandom is being a fan even when your sports team isn't doing so well, right? It's the commitment piece. What sports allow you to do is, when you're next to some random guy, you can always talk about the local game. It's a quick way to get into conversation with somebody. So there are things like that. It's like there's a shared cultural framework. It's almost like the cultural furniture. Like, nobody really puts it there, but you can always rely on it. And what happens with the sale of the Lakers is that it reveals all of the ways in which those things that I love about sports are increasingly becoming not the central point of what sports are, because ultimately it's about making money, generating money, that kind of stuff.
I love that image that the team chooses you. That's so true. I walked into Fifth Third Bank a few weeks ago. This episode is not yet sponsored by Fifth Third, but inshallah one day. I feel like they could cover it. And I walk in, and the teller is a young man, and he's wearing a Ravens jersey.
Uh-huh.
And so we immediately had a moment of, I won't say connection, I'm not a Ravens fan, but we had a point of connection, that we had a point of conversation. So I said, oh, are you from Baltimore? And he said, no. I said, oh, like what connected you to the Ravens? And he told me, I think, one of the best stories I've ever heard. So he said that when he was in third grade, a lot of his friends started getting into football, and his best friend, I forgot his name, let's say his name is Jacob. Jacob becomes an Eagles fan. So he says, this is the weirdest thing I've ever heard in my life. He says, I want to be an Eagles fan too. And Jacob says, no, you can't have the same team as me, which is sort of backwards, because I thought growing up you wanted more people to be fans of your team, not less, right?
Yeah,
it's not like something you want to have a monopoly on, right? We're not the oligarchs. We're just normal people.
Exactly.
And so he said, well, then I couldn't be an Eagles fan, and I didn't know who to be a fan of, but I thought for some reason that it had to be a bird team. Like it had to be a species of dinosaur. So he decided that he would be a Ravens fan. And then I was like, but the Ravens aren't even that new. And then I was like, oh God, this is like a kid. And look at the vast chasm of time. But I understood, because I grew up a Lakers fan in Western Massachusetts in the 1980s during the Magic Bird era. And then I had a very good friend, Ben, who's probably not listening, but in case he's listening, from Somers, Connecticut, who was a Patriots fan. And he was such a pure, unadulterated Patriots fan that he was a Patriots fan in the absolute garbage years when Drew Bledsoe promised hope. And I remember he would get picked on for being a Patriots fan, but he never gave up on his team. And I wasn't a big football fan, but I always admired the Patriots because I admired his loyalty.
Yeah.
And that actually, it does resonate with me, because I inherited the Lakers from my dad and my brother. And I inherited the Patriots from Ben, really. And now if I cheer for the Bengals, it's because my wife is from Cincinnati. We live in Cincinnati. The kids have a deep connection to Cincinnati. It is like our team. I never really thought of it that way, which is probably why the betrayal of the Lakers to me cut so deep. And it hurts.
Haroon, I think it's worth saying, because no shade at this teller, but I think your rationale for being a Lakers fan is actually much more substantive than choosing because he wants a bird mascot.
I think he thought it had to be a bird team. Like he was like a little kid. That's why it was so adorable, that he was a little kid who just imposed this rule on himself, and he didn't know. He just thought it had to be a bird, and then he was spurned by Jacob, who's some kind of third grade jerk, apparently. I just made up this villain in my head. But no, I mean, yeah, it was because of Kareem. It was because of my dad. It's because of my brother. They were fans. The Lakers were like the not Celtics, the not New England. I wanted to get out of New England a little bit. Then it cuts because it feels like your team has betrayed you, which then asks the question, when was the team ever on your side to begin with?
Yeah. Or what is even the team? Like, what actually is it at the core? Does the team owe something to you? Because we sure feel like we owe something to our team.
Yes. Yeah. But now that I'm older, I feel like the team owes something to me.
Exactly. And at the very least, we want our teams to not reveal the brutal greed that is like
reveal what they really are. Okay,
yeah,
so
exactly.
let me ask you, because this is what happened to me. I've fallen out of love with a lot of sports. And actually this summer, when I got so into the NBA Finals and so into the World Cup, it was both a reminder of this part of me I miss. I liked it, but also why I couldn't go back. And I'm happy to return to that. But I want to ask you, before you cover that arc, who were your teams and how did you get into your teams?
My main team is Ohio State, the college football team. Grew up in Ohio. I've been watching the Buckeyes since I can remember. The first games I can remember watching were Ohio State football games. Growing up, I also like local teams. I like the Cincinnati Reds. I like the Bengals. My NBA team was the Cavs. I've always just really loved basketball. So I was the ball boy for my varsity high school basketball team as a sixth grader. They went on this magical run to the state finals. In the state finals, they played Akron St. Vincent St. Mary, who was the team, which is the team of LeBron's team. Yeah. LeBron was a freshman that year.
Wow.
Our team was actually winning at halftime, but LeBron ended up putting up like 30. and they won by, I don't know, 15 or 20 for the state title. But I went through the line and shook LeBron's hand, and then slowly started to see him just this meteoric rise for LeBron. Next year, I think he's on the Sports Illustrated cover. All of a sudden, he's touring the country playing these games. He's the next Jordan. So I've always had some connection to LeBron, which I've sort of fallen out of love with now because of some of the same currents we're seeing with the Lakers, to be honest. But yeah, local teams.
Yeah, you're an Ohio guy, so your loyalties are to Ohio.
Yep.
So when I was growing up, and maybe this is part of why I feel very strongly about sports, I spent a lot of time on sports. I spent a lot of time on a lot of things because you have a lot of free time when you're young, and that's kind of normal. But it was hard as a Lakers fan because Pacific time. So we would have to stay up for many games, especially in the playoffs, finals. The Lakers were a very good team historically as a franchise for a lot of those years. So there were a lot of playoffs, a lot of finals, and we would have to stay up till midnight, 1 a.m. watching these games. And this is obviously before the internet in many cases, or before the internet was really big. So I gave a lot of my life to the Lakers. I still remember I watched on my laptop Kobe's last game, in the middle of the night. I think it was 2016. And robbed myself of 3 hours of sleep that in this moment I really wish I had back. But maybe I don't wish I had back because I'm glad I watched that game. But it was this kind of feeling that the Lakers as this idea were almost like an anchor in my life when the rest of life was crazy. And maybe that's something else sports do.
Yes.
Is they give you something to hold on to, that this is the same team. I actually, now that I think about it, I wonder if sports fandom plays the role that historical memory does. Like, sports fandom is for Americans what historical memory is for a lot of other countries. Because we don't have a lot of shared history. We don't. Many of us are immigrants, or even if our roots go back in the country 100, 150 years, that's not that long. Many of us are disconnected from the history before that. But sports are one of those things where you can say the 1950s, 60s, there's this level of continuity, right? Football is probably, with baseball, football and baseball go back to the 19th century. So it's like this thing that's always been there.
It certainly is a myth, a narrative that can unite us. It's not monomyth in terms of like we're all kind of fractured and around our certain teams and that kind of stuff. But there is this way in which our national story is played out in sports. I mean, like, the crudest way we see this is the ways in which the U.S. military invest a lot of money every single year to make sure the NFL is doing things like flyovers and playing the national anthem and that kind of stuff. So I think there absolutely is kind of an overlap between those things. For me, the thing that happens when you're a kid, maybe I didn't choose my team based upon wanting a bird mascot, but what happens is you have these connections with people, right? I remember my first game with my dad. I remember the moment that the Buckeyes won the national title and who I was watching it with. It just has this like really, really cohering effect on the way you structure community and belonging. And then what has happened, it seems, is that belonging has been commodified. Right? It's been commodified. And with the Lakers sale, the thing that I'm wondering is like, what happens when being a fan becomes being a consumer? And how does that shift our self-identity, our sense of community, and our ability to kind of maintain these illusions that are so core to some of the good parts of sports?
There's this term I remember reading a while back. I think it was during the Great Recession, maybe before that, rational irrationality, where it's fully rational for an individual to act in a certain way, like the stock market's tanking, so you pull your money out. There's a bank run, you pull your money out. But when individual behaviors are magnified and amplified to the collective level, it's a disaster. So it makes sense for us individually in a recession to stop spending and save money. But when we all do that, the recession just gets worse.
Right.
So that's where Keynesianism, the government steps in and prints money or generates jobs, what have you. This is not an economics podcast, although I suppose everything is at the end of the day. So I'm going to pick on LeBron, but I'm actually not picking on LeBron specifically as a person, more of LeBron as an instance of rational irrationality. So for a long time, Black athletes were exploited by owners and leagues. We know that. In many cases, in many leagues, they weren't even allowed to play for a very long time. And then they gradually wrest more control over their own agency, literally and figuratively. And so they demand more money, which again is fully rational and it makes sense. And then you have the rise of very prominent athletes as businessmen. So Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, LeBron, the decision, they become cultural events almost bigger than their teams themselves. We just see this with soccer players, right?
Yep.
People know Lamine Yamal. They might not know who he plays for. Everyone knows who Messi is. They might not even remember that he's in Miami. Messi is Messi. But when that happens at scale, it takes away one of the last things about sports that makes sports more than sports.
Yeah.
One thing for me that I always found endearing and special about the Lakers is, and actually one of the reasons why I think Lakers fans tend to be fonder of Kobe than Shaq, is because what Shaq did after the Lakers is kind of turn his career into alphabet soup. At some point, he played for the Celtics, which is just like going from the U.S. team to the Soviet team. Like, why would you do that? And he played for the Cavs, right? Like, there were teams he played for that probably I could make up and people would believe me. And that makes sense for him. Maybe he enjoyed it. It made him money, whatever. But it took away from the idea that this team was something special, that I'm going to give you hours of my time and I'm going to cheer for you, but you embody something that I can attach myself to. It's not just cold and calculating careerism. And I would put the owners at the top of that. I'm not saying that they're exempt from that.
Yeah.
But I guess what I mean is there's a few reasons I fell out of beloved sports. One was I grew up, I'm too busy, I don't have the time to watch games from start to finish. 2, my brain is shattered and fragmented. Thank you, phones. In all seriousness, right? 3, I can't stay up that late. I'm just older and slower. And then 4th and 5th, I think these are the parts that actually hit me the hardest. 4th was, why am I investing so much emotional energy and time into something that doesn't actually do anything for me as a person or my family? If I have a limited amount of time and I go work out or I sit with friends, or I volunteer in some capacity, I'm doing something tangible to make the world better. That's not to say that I shouldn't have time for myself, but then that brings me to the 5th point, which is if I'm going to sit and watch something, I want to watch something where I feel like it reflects something about the world that I admire. And instead now when I watch sports, I just get gambling ads nonstop. Like literally the betting lines come before the statistics.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why am I just watching the evisceration of what's left of American society because it's got nice graphics and cool athletic achievements? Like, I would rather, honestly, like to your point, I would rather watch our Masjid basketball team than go to an NBA game. Like 100%, no hesitation. Because I feel like I would shell out hundreds of dollars. At this point, tickets are going for like obscene amounts. And then for what?
There was a thing that happened for me a couple of years ago because particularly Ohio State football had become my primary escape in life. Like it was like the thing that I consumed, podcast, articles, games, whatever, when I needed a little bit of a break, a little bit of an exhale. And then I realized as I was watching the games that I wasn't actually enjoying watching the games because I had put so much into this team of 18 to 22-year-olds that I have no control over. And the small shift that I made that was, I think, marginally helpful, but didn't solve the core problem was that I started to refuse to watch games by myself.
That's so interesting.
So I'm like, I'm going to watch this game with my dad, with my buddy Adam, with somebody who cares about the team as well. And at the very least, I'm going to enjoy being with them. So it's a mechanism for us to strengthen our relationship. And I think that does a lot for me in like kind of returning back to what I want the core role of sports to be in my life. But doesn't solve everything. I mean, like you just like start to look at the context just a little bit. Things like the way in which our local stadiums are being built very often by taxpayer money with no benefit to the local community, the ways in which gambling is for sure degrading our society and especially the young men in our society. I mean, we can just keep going and going and going. The way that we've created these intentional monopolies, we've literally carved out antitrust exemptions for these entities so that they can commodify this sense of belonging while also just getting filthy rich with no meaningful competition in a country that prides themselves on being a capitalist kind of entity. I mean, that's just to begin. You know, we could keep going and going and going. And so it's certainly not pure.
You can see what's happening to our society as a whole through sports. That the bonds of civic association, trust, community, neighborhood, university, academia, alma mater, whatever it is, everything is just turning into a financial transaction.
Yep. Everything's a commodity. Yep.
And that's why I think sports are doomed. That right now, if you look at the valuation, you see one thing. But I would say to the person who says, look at the United States in the 1990s and look at the United States today and how far we've fallen, that from unchallenged world dominance, we've come to a point where we're the butt of every joke. Because it's sad to say, but we are, because we financialized everything. We turned our own nation into a transaction. And not surprisingly, when you do that, eventually the people who come to the top are the people for whom there is nothing more important than a transaction. And so sports have turned themselves into just an opportunity to print cash and hoard cash. And so eventually fans will collectively respond to that and walk away. Because at some point, people are going to get sick of being advertised to and pandered to and being hooked onto gambling. And they're going to realize that this has nothing to do with them.
I hope that's the case. I'm not sure that we're ever going to get to that point, but I hope that's the case. It does make me wonder if something can be both a commodity and also sacred. Are those categories definitionally opposite of one another?
No.
Tell me how they can be both, how something can be both.
Because I went down this rabbit hole of what happened to the Lakers and why don't I watch them anymore. But why did I enjoy watching the Knicks and the World Cup and things like that? It's not a fair weather phenomenon. It's that once upon a time it meant something deeper and now it doesn't.
Right.
It's not, to me, it's an interesting place to land. And your question hits really hard because I find myself not really fully satisfied by the narratives we have socially right now between right and left on how to fix what's wrong with the country. Because I think that sometimes on the right, the narrative becomes so enamored of certain themes around money and agency and capital that there's almost no space for community or connection or mutual responsibility. And then on the left, I think there's an assumption that you can just engineer these problems by taking that commodity and distributing it differently.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's quite what it is. I don't want us to believe that we just exempt ourselves from the process because someone else distributes the money differently. And that's not to say that's all that's happening, but it does come up a lot. What you said about how you changed how you watch sports is actually where I think the beginnings of a solution can be found. And it's not a single thing, but one, I would say that how we watch sports matters. So how we choose to consume sports makes a big difference in how sports function and run and make money. The second I would say is that when you said, is there a difference between the commodity and the sacred? I think there is an overlap, but that's when you have certain guardrails. Like, what does this thing mean? What is my responsibility as a player, an owner, a fan within the context of my community? And that's where you ask questions like you did. If I watch this with other people, is it now a different experience than I watch it by myself? And why is that so? Right? If I choose to spend more time on local sports or playing sports myself, maybe that's better for me.
Yes.
And it produces the same memories and possibly even more vivid injuries, right? Because now I'm in my late 40s. But to me, that's actually really the heart of it. Like, I love that you said you're an Ohio guy, so you were the Ohio State guy, right? Indefinite plus definite article. I'm gonna forgive you because it's a cultural particularity that I don't understand, but it has to mean something. And at some point, all these teams just feel interchangeable. They're just giant faceless corporations.
Yeah.
And I mean, effectively, that's what it is, right? Like, what is Los Angeles about the Lakers? What is Chicago about the Bulls? And there used to be, early in the NBA days, there was a regional draft, for example. There were certain responsibilities regionally. There was a fandom that was regional. You had TV rights that also made things regional. But that's how you turn a commodity into something sacred, but you prevent something sacred from being seen or elevated to a point it shouldn't be elevated to, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with sports making money. I do think there is something wrong, though, where you go to a Reds game and it costs like $100 to feed your family.
Yeah.
That's a little obscene. We've gone way too far. And if that's what the league proposes, then maybe we need to spend more time in spaces where you have entertainment that's actually accessible to people and makes a difference in their lives and is fun and doesn't break the bank. You know, when you mentioned 12 billion, I wasn't even actually impressed. Because these numbers don't mean anything to me anymore. What does that mean? We were told the Iran war cost maybe 30 billion, maybe 150 billion. Elon Musk is worth $1 trillion. Is he actually worth $1 trillion? Nobody knows. They're just like accounting fictions created, numbers inflated to generate portfolios and create certain outcomes. And I don't know if they have any connection to reality. Because, like you said, it's built and structured legally and financially in such a way that is not actually allowed to make contact with reality. Is that what it's really worth? Or is that what it has been engineered to be worth to allow owners to get away with certain things or cover certain things or pay for certain things? Do you know what I'm saying?
I absolutely know what you're saying. Yeah. The threads that I'm picking up on from your answer here are participation and reality. And so we participate in reality with people in real life. So local sports that we can go and attend with our local high school game, or the place that we can actually afford, where we can cultivate and build relationships. Those things feel so much more generative to me. I want to throw one more kind of thing in here.
Let's do it. Just blow it up, Joey.
My buddy Adam, who I've just known since fourth grade. I was the best man in his wedding. He married this really great girl named Courtney, and they're from different places. And so they decided they needed a new team. Okay. They needed a new team.
Oh, interesting.
And so they went on this journey to try to identify which team they were going to choose.
Was it a bird watching journey?
It was. No birds. But it was like very much informed. This isn't gendered, no shade at women, but by the colors of the team, by the story, the background, the story of the team, that kind of stuff. And they landed at the Green Bay Packers. Because it's a storied organization, there's a lot of cool things. Actually, some people will point to the Packers and their ownership model, where like the community actually has stakes in the team as sort of maybe one of the ways forward and all this. But me and my other friend Michael just ruthlessly make fun of him for choosing such a random team to be a fan of. Because I'm like, you have no connection to this team. Like, you can't just arbitrarily choose a team to be a fan of. Because for me, fandom isn't something that you choose. It's not something you choose. It's something that you inherit. It's something that's given to you in some way, right? And so, like, when you tell your story about why you're a Lakers fan, the thing that I hear you say is that my dad was a Lakers fan because of Kareem, because of what it meant to be a Muslim in America, because of the ways that he was embodying that. And so I inherited that from my father. That resonates for me. But randomly choosing a team, to me, participates in the commodification of sports.
I was going to say that once upon a time, I was trying to explain the history of Islam in the West in a talk, and I reached for the Lakers and the Celtics rivalry. And I said that if you want to understand the role of Islam in the West in the world, it's like the Lakers and the Celtics. And there's other civilizations that make a run here and there, like the Warriors and the Bulls and the Spurs. But really, it's just the two of us that are just constantly, and we are kind of opposite of each other, but we're also very similar to each other.
I want to hear your take on Clash of Civilizations in the future. Like that. That's good.
It's game recognizes game, right? So it's like, hey, yeah, I see you. You know, it's just back and forth. Although of late, unfortunately, a lot of the Islamic world sort of looks a little bit more like the Clippers. But
oh my gosh,
just being honest, right? But then now it's like, here come the Kushners just buying the whole thing out, and that definitely feels true to the Muslim majority world right now. Like, they will just open up, just buy whatever you want. You can just own all our resources. That's great as long as we get.
There's a whole thread here, Haroon.
I feel like this is great. About
the level of Saudi money that's in some of these purchases. That, like, anyways, go ahead.
That's another thread. On the subject of colors, one of the hardest parts about being a Lakers fan is you kind of have to be built like Kobe to pull off bright yellow and purple, right? The average man does not look good in those colors. If you're ripped and an athlete, yeah, you look good probably in anything, but certainly in a bright color because it draws attention to yourself. But again, you're ripped, right? You look good. If you look like me, like, do I really want to wear a bright yellow shirt like out in the middle of the day? It's hard. It was not easy being a Lakers fan. It was tough. All those titles, and then you didn't know what color shirt to wear. So once they started making those black shirts, it was like, oh, thank God. But you know, you mentioned the thing with my dad, and my brother and I and my friend Nabil, we went to the 2004 finals. We just saved up all our money. It was the most ridiculous pilgrimage of my life. This is crazy to think about. We got seats in, I think it was row 16 or 17 for $800 a pop, which is just, I mean, again, that was 2004. But I mean, still, that was not that much money, right? Mm-hmm. And we were broke at the end of that, right? We got a hotel in Koreatown. We got there, and I asked the guy, "Where's the subway?" And the guy at the lobby, and he just laughed in my face. This LA man, there ain't no freaking subway. And so we had no money. We didn't know what to do. So we got dropped off at what was then Staples Center. at like noon for the game that night because we had nowhere else to go.
Oh, dang.
And we learned a lot of things in that experience. Like, for example, before the game, the arena is frozen to 40 degrees because there's going to be 20,000 people in there. But when there's not 20,000 people in there, it really sucks. So no matter what color your shirt is, you're freaking freezing, which we were freezing. And we watched the game. And I have never experienced anything like that. I've never been in a place where everyone else was rooting for the same team as me. Like the guy next to me, when Kobe hit this last second shot to tie the game and went into overtime, the guy next to me just hugged me.
Yeah, it's magic.
Like he was overjoyed.
It's magic. Yeah.
It's magical. And so there is something special about sports. Do I think you can pick a team? I think that even when people pick a team, they are being picked by the team. They just don't realize it.
Ooh.
So when I watched the finals, again, the first basketball game I watched start to finish in the last 5 years was last year with the Pacers. And I was like, oh, this team is pretty good. And then, of course, the injury and season didn't go the way they thought it would go. And this year, my brother-in-law's in town. He grew up in Cincinnati. And he says to me, hey, I'm going to watch Game 7 of the Thunder Spurs series. You want to come with me? And actually, to your point, it was him and a bunch of old friends from high school and college. And so we all watched the game. And I was like, oh, that was kind of fun. I like that. I don't know if I liked it because I liked the game so much as I liked the fact that we were watching it together. So then I was like, I'll watch the finals. But here's the crazy part. I went into the finals rooting for the Spurs because in that game, I was really intrigued by Wemby. I was like, oh, he's such a fascinating individual. And I became a Knicks fan. One, because of the way the Knicks played, but two, I spent 20 years of my life in New York and I've never seen that kind of energy or camaraderie in New York City.
Totally.
And it was electric. So it was like, did I pick New York or did something about that experience pick me?
I absolutely see what you're saying. I think part of like the raw calculations of Adam and Courtney, like trying to decipher who they were going to be a fan of. If you had to do a pro and con list, it starts to be less like something picked you and more like you're making a calculation.
Then can I say something about calculation that actually, I'll give you a calculation that resonated personally. So I feel like I'm defending Adam. So Adam, if you're watching, I don't know, you owe me something. Not a Packers jersey though, because it has the same problems like yellow, green. It's, again, colors that if you're built like Joe Burrow, that's fine. You can wear bright orange. Nobody's going to care, but I'm not going to wear bright orange. Maybe I would. I mean, I don't know, right? Probably not though. I don't think.
Yeah, unless you start, hunting or something.
Yeah, or construction, right? Neither of which anyone, like when we've reached that point, you can be sure that it's not just the Western civilization that's declined on its own. It's the whole planet. Like there was nowhere left to go because,
yes.
Yeah. But what I was going to say is a lot of American Muslims I know were cheering for Morocco and Egypt and these teams in the World Cup.
Yes.
And they were like, oh, we're cheering for Muslim teams. And then I had this moment while I was watching because I had this back and forth with someone and they said something like, oh, the colonizer lost. Where it was a team where Germany lost to someone. And I was like, well, first of all, Germany, yes, did colonize some countries. But I was like, I don't associate the team with the country's foreign policy or history. Like that's a little bit, if it's contemporary, I can understand that. But if you're talking about the past, it gets really weird really fast, right? Because then what if I look at, the Egyptian team and say, does the Egyptian team then have to stand for the human rights abuses of the Egyptian government? Like, obviously not. That doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. Right? I know these are complicated emotions and feelings, but then I had this other moment where I said, actually, teams like France and Spain, because the US at this point was long gone, actually inspire me because I feel like they point to more of what I think our country actually is and should be. So that to me, I actually started rooting for those teams because I was like, actually, this feels like this is what I believe in. A pluralistic democracy, a multicultural, multiracial, multi-religious democracy. Why would I cheer for something that doesn't speak to my lived experience over something that I think does, if that's the metric people are using? Like if the metric is foreign policy and politics and governance, which I don't necessarily think is the primary sports metric. So long story short, I think that the Green Bay Packers are a great team, but I don't know that I would root for them necessarily. Although I like their ownership model, so maybe we just take their ownership model.
Yeah, totally.
And then we beat them with it.
I love that. I got one more question for you. Is there anything that you are devoted to, that you love, that you don't want to understand economically?
Give me an example. What do you mean? Like that I don't want to reduce to economics or think about the economics of?
Well, I think what's happening here is like the puncturing of the illusion. And I think so much of what sports is doing for me is like, actually, some of the reason why I stopped watching the NFL was because it became so politicized. Not to even comment on what I agreed with and what I disagreed with. That's not really the point. The point was like, I don't want sports to be the vehicle for my politics. I want these to be separate categories. And what's happening here is that the economic ideology is overrunning all of these other domains. It's becoming the operating principle for every single thing that's happening in our life.
Everything.
And so it diminishes my capacity to love these things that I've loved for so long when it's housed in these terms. And so besides sports, right? I mean, I think you probably say something like your faith identity as well. But is there anything that you love that you don't want to understand, like you resist understanding in economic terms?
I actually was going to invoke faith in a different way to your point. Sometimes people say everything is political or some things shouldn't be political. I think there's probably a gray area somewhere in there where things should not be principally seen through politics. Case in point, that's how I looked at the World Cup. That obviously, I know there's a lot of corruption at FIFA. Look at how they tried to effectively sell the World Cup, which ended with the team that I used to care about being bought, which felt a little unfair. It's a little bit like the Iraq War. Like, we should invade that country, but we can't, so let's go to invade that country instead. So this is like 2003 Operation Los Angeles Freedom. But there's a cause, right? There's one to really rally Americans behind. This people of Los Angeles need your help. You can imagine how that would land in, say, New York, let alone Green Bay. But
is the Kobe statue coming down at the end of that? Like, what happens?
Are there going to be tanks there? Are they going to be battery powered, like electric vehicle tanks? Like, how's that going to work? I don't know. No, like I guess what I'm trying to say, and I don't know how to articulate this, but I love what you're pointing to, because there's something so real there that I don't know how to define. Some things should not be reduced to money or politics or even framed through religion. I've met certainly a number of people in my life who make everything about religion in a way that's just suffocating. And then there's people who make everything about politics or ideology, and that is also suffocating, that there have to be spaces where we can express all of ourselves and different parts of ourselves and even connect with people. Actually, and here now I'm turning it sort of instrumental, which I don't mean to, but I can sit down with, like you said, and talk about the World Cup or the Super Bowl or what have you with someone that otherwise I have nothing in common with.
Yes.
So it reminds us of what we have in common. I think for me, it's like when it gets to the point where you feel like that's all there is. When it's transactional. It doesn't mean anything for you. And the way I would put it is, we all cheer for our teams. Do our teams cheer for us? And what I mean is, I don't expect a Kobe Bryant or Luka Doncic or Thrive Capital or whatever it is, right? I don't expect them to operate on the same register as I do. There's totally different realities. I'm not a multimillionaire. I'm not this giant fund, right? But you can still see in someone's comportment if they care, what they care about. Like, is this an institution that's investing back in its players, its fans? Is it making the experience accessible? The Mamdani move where he made all those World Cup tickets like bargain basement prices for people. That to me is what a team should also be doing. When it just becomes a parade of really rich people making each other richer, then like, why am I participating in that? Like, what do I even get out of that? Like, I'm tired enough as it is. My life is hard enough as it is. That's where actually I would say that's where you need something that isn't turned into a commodity. And then it's like, what's the replacement? Like you said, that might be watching with a friend or group of friends. I would say it might be a different kind of sport or a different collective experience.
Yeah, beautiful. I love it. I think I'm good. You want to say something else?
I mean, not really. I like dinosaurs though. So like, I would say this is a great note to end on. Like I would go back to Fifth Third and ask that young man, would you consider the Toronto Raptors? Because, you know, raptors are sort of birds too. Actually, no, they're not. The birds are the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs are not birds.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to Zach Swellbar for recording our theme music. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know what questions we should be asking and who else we should be talking to.